Welcome back to Harbor. We haven't seen this in nearly 40 years. The UAW, the United Auto Workers Union, ordering its 70,000 members who work for General Motors to strike, protesting what they call the one-sided nature of its labor contract negotiations with GM. Are we losing our industrial base in this country? And is corporate greed killing the working class? That's the hardball debate tonight. It's a hot one. Jim Cramer is the host of Mad Money on CNBC, and Ross Eisenbray is the vice president of the Economic Policy Institute. He's an attorney specializing in labor and employment issues. Let me go to Ross first of all. What's going on right now with this fight over job security out in Michigan? What's the fight about?
Well, the fight's about keeping jobs in the United States. General Motors says that they will not make commitments to the UAW to keep the 73,000 jobs that are left at GM in the United States in the United States. They're interested in moving, as they have been, to Mexico, to China, to Eastern Europe, Russia, all over the world. And the UAW is saying, we're making concessions. We're the most productive workers in the world. Keep the jobs here.
Well, you know, Charles Wilson, head of GM, once said, what's good for GM is good for America. How can you say that, Jim, if you're taking the jobs out of America?
Well, I got to tell you something. First of all, you got this issue all framed wrong, Chris. This is about breaking the union. You break the union, you save the company. Do you know that in 1992, Caterpillar broke the union? Same union. Caterpillar stock was at $5. Now it's at 76. You know, the same month that they broke the union, GM stock was at 34. Where is it today? 34. If GM wants to be a competitive company in the world marketplace like Caterpillar is, the #1 maker of earth-moving equipment in the world, it's got to break the union. Wagner's going to do that, and that's how you save American manufacturing.
So you're saying that it was the industry, the company, that forced this?
Absolutely. This is a
walkout.
Rick Wagner is not going to let this company be staying at 35 for another 15 years. He has to break the union to save. This is not destroying the village to save it. This ain't Vietnam. This is about saving American manufacturing. And the only way you're going to do it is you break that UAW.
Okay, Ross, what's your view?
Well, that's a pretty sad view. If that's what Rick Wagner is doing, he's going to tear down General Motors, you know, along with the union. They can't sustain a long strike.
Down. There ain't much there.
The Teamsters have already said that they're not going to move GM vehicles, so they can bring in strike replacements, but they won't move any vehicles.
Same thing I heard about a Caterpillar in 1992. It was supposed to be shut down. Now it's the #1 earth-moving manufacturer in the world.
Are you saying that GM's tough enough to break the Teamsters too?
This guy Wagner's a real deal.
Let me ask you about a couple issues. One is job security. Let me ask you, Ross, is it feasible for a company in a global economy to guarantee jobs in this country? To say we will guarantee you're going to keep the 73,000 jobs that exist today in perpetuity. Is that a reasonable demand by labor?
I don't think that that's what the UAW is asking for. I don't know the specifics at the table, but they're asking for commitments that GM make investments in plants in the United States. And my understanding is that they can't get them to make those commitments. And, you know, they really are the most productive. They're more productive than the Japanese transplant workers. The problem that GM has is with its tremendous retiree health benefit issues. That's something that the government ought to be helping GM with.
Well, that's another issue. Let me go back to let's stick to the security question. Jim, is it reasonable to ask a company to guarantee your jobs in America?
Not in this day and age, no. I mean, we're getting the heck kicked out of us. You can't guarantee jack anymore. We need to be a flexible workforce if we're going to be able to compete with the Japanese, the Chinese, the Indians. Everyone wants in this auto game. You can't offer those kind of guarantees. This
isn't just about autos, though. I mean, this is happening union, non-union. It's happening outside of autos. EDS just announced it's sending 15,000 jobs to India. This is a problem that every American worker has a stake in, and they ought to be rooting for the UAW here.
Well, I think if you root for the UAW, then you just let GM go away. I mean,
what happens if we have do you see a future 5, 10 years from now where we don't have an auto industry in this country, Jim Cramer?
If you don't break the UAW, we won't. There's no real reason to make cars here. And I understand from Mr. Eisenbray that we're productive, but I got to tell you something. If we're productive, how come come, it costs so much less. Now, I know you got the health care considerations, but, you know, we got a union that makes it so that they spend a lot of money building cars. If we want to get back in this game, look, do I want to break the union? I'm like Big Bill Haywood. I was a member of the union. I was a shop steward at one time. But I'm putting on my Mad Money hat here, Chris. And if you want GM to be a viable company, they got to do what Caterpillar did.
Let me ask finally this great question of Ross. You got a lot of retirees out in Chicago and Illinois, all in that part of the country, Michigan, Indiana. A lot of retired auto families. They're living on health care that they've negotiated for it when they were in their working lives. Is that in danger right now? Ross.
Yeah, it's absolutely in danger.
That health care is in danger. Are these companies dumping their responsibilities to these retired families in terms of health?
They're doing it all over the country. You know, there's always the possibility that they would go bankrupt and use bankruptcy to dump their health care liabilities. But that's what the union's fighting for. It's fighting to preserve something for 350,000 people who are not working in the plants right now.
Is that a reasonable demand, Jim, to have your health care promises kept?
Chris, let me give you one statistic.
I mean, these promises were made, weren't they?
Look, I'm going to give you a game, set, match here. I'm going to rest my case. GM's the largest buyer of Viagra in the world.
What do you mean by that?
They buy more of it. They're the biggest buyer of Viagra. That's one of their health care costs. They're the largest buyer. So
this is a powerful way of saying that the auto industry has become the health industry, right? Because they're providing so much health care for so many people.
Well, I'm trying to boost your numbers. I can do that thing. You want me to tell you, they're actually a very large health care company.
They are a big health care provider, and that's a real problem. We need national health insurance. We need to lift that obligation off the back of General Motors so that they can keep these jobs, middle-class jobs, in the United States.
He's absolutely
Once that happens, then they'll be able to produce cars.
So the government picks up the tab.
Absolutely right, Mr. Eisenberg. That is what has to happen because
so it's going to be like it's going to be like the Railroad Retirement Act, where an industry goes bust and the government just picks up the tab for all the losses, all the commitments, right? Ross?
Well, we need something like that. We need these jobs in the United States because our trade deficit is, just blowing up right now. We need to be able to produce these things here.
If GM wins and they bust the union, I'm telling you, you're going to have a five-fold increase in this stock. And in the end, this is America, and that's what we care about.
You know, Cramer, I think there might be a market in building those bathtubs, those metal bathtubs they have in those Cialis commercials. You know, the older couple sitting out overlooking the horizon, watching the sunset from their separate bathtubs. You ever think about that scene? I always wonder, what is that supposed to suggest?
That's supposed to suggest that GM's costs are way out of line.
You know, the mad money perspective is, how do you get the stock up as high as you can? That doesn't do anything for the middle class in America. That's why we've lost the middle class. 90%, I'm not just talking the middle, 90% of Americans have seen their share of national income go down by $270 billion in 3 years.
Jim and Ross, I hear the same conversations here at NBC and GE. The same conversations being held in this show are being held around this show here at GE and NBC. Everywhere in the world we're talking about it. They call it 2.0 here. It's restructuring. It's whatever you call it. And job security is zero. Anyway, thank you very much, Jim Cramer. Thank you, Ross Eisenbreit.